Hello, this is Jim Mitchell. We're back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast. Let's get right into it. What Republicans want in exchange for raising the debt limit from NBCDFW.com by her umph. And, I think that's just kind of theater, they didn't really, they'll find a way around it. They'll find a way around those debt limit. It's just theater. That's just theater. This image really says it all. A tweet from Dave Smith, and it's a tweet of it's a classic tweet of the leftist march. It's a tweet from quote tweet from Philibon. It was the Occupy Wall Street marching down Wall Street, I think, or one of the streets in New York, 2012, and with their Occupy Wall Street banner. In 2018, they have a J.P. Morgan Pride banner. So that's I think that's really, I agree with that. The thing is that they dismantled Occupy Wall Street by pushing identity politics, and that's a good way to show it. And that's why people you kind of see, I would say. Next is one of my favorite moments of the 2020 George Floyd protests from End Wokeness, and it was two tweets from Chris Martin Palmer. And Chris Martin, for the first tweet, was like, "Burn that shit down, burn it all down." Then he's like, they just attacked, and a few days later, it was like, they just attacked our sister community down the street. It's a gay community, and they tried to climb the gates. They had to beat them back. They destroyed Starbucks. They're now in front of my building. Get these animals the fuck out of my neighborhood. Go back to where you live. And I'm like, a riot is language of the unheard until it ends up in your backyard. So that's important to remember. Everyone supports violence for political ends until they have to get near it, I would say. And that's important to think about. I would say, it's always, when the violence doesn't affect you, you always seem to justify it, I would say. That's what a lot of people on social media, I would say. Not necessarily me, but, we'll have to see what happens. And one guy said, one guy in the comment section of the Reddit post is like, that's a white supremacist talking point. I said, maybe he didn't label 90% of the population of white supremacists, so that would mean something. Then we have federal courts send hundreds of Social Security disability cases back due to errors, wrong denials from the Washington Post. That's interesting, I guess. I've applied for that before. I didn't get it because, I don't know, they don't think I'm autistic enough, I guess. But, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, I don't know how much longer we will have Social Security for, but hopefully we can, find a better system than it soon, because I think it's just a ticking time bomb. It's been for decades now, I would say. It's clockwork at this point. Tweet from LP National, and I posted that. And that was a tweet of them clicking a tweet from Robert P. Murphy, who tweeted, "Democracy is majority rule unless majority supports something progressives don't like, in which case it becomes fascism." And, that's important to remember, that, the left loves democracy, but then when Florida has a democratically elected government they don't like, that's suddenly fascism. And that's important to remember. And the thing is, right, it's like, democracy is through, we'd have all our positions to go through, but I'm like, the Reddit and Twitter aren't reality. That's important to remember. The polls are always easy to rig, I would say. Then we have, far-right Christian nationalist county commission's actions backfire on them from, it's a link to the, from Donald Kiefer, to the religious r/religious fruitcake subreddit, and, I don't really care too much about it, I would say. Yeah, so, I guess, well, I guess, I don't really care too much to see too much into this, I would say, but, yeah, it's always freedom of religion, you always have to have all the, religion, all the other religions equal. That's why they always put up the Satanist stuff when they put the church stuff on the county courthouses, or, if they put the LGBTQ stuff, I say that's definitely religion at this point. The rainbow kind of is the cross of the left, I would say, and you are increasingly seeing that. So, yeah. Reminder that Trump was responsible for Fauci being the face of the COVID response. This fact alone disqualifies Trump from being president again, from LP Kentucky. And yeah, I said Fauci's just the tip of the iceberg. Look at Jerome Powell and John Bolton. Tons of people that Trump appointed that weren't too good, and he says, "Oh, if I do it again, I'm going to do it all better," And the thing is, it's just a show, he's just in it for the theater, it's just theater for him. It's theater for all of them, really, but he's really in it just for the theater, I would say at this point. A 95-year-old Australian woman dies after police shoot her with a stun gun, from NPR.org, Friday Harumph. And yeah, that's interesting, I would say. I don't think I guess it's just guns kill people, but stun guns kill people too. That's why I guess the thing is that it's why it's just stay out of the way of the police, I would say, if you're able to. TIL, a private corporation, is far left from Motherfucking Inc. And it's a tweet from Eve6. These guys are so funny because all they do is rally against brands for doing free market stuff, call it communism, and then vote for the guy who will make sure the corporations don't have to pay any taxes. And I said, the free market does include backlash. It's important to remember that. And I do think, the corporations, from a more social perspective, you could say they're far left because of how much they've handed fruit to identity politics, like, the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light thing, and now Target. And you also had that Miller Lite one with all the woman stuff. And I would say, definitely economically they're not far left, but, either socially you could argue they're far left, I would say. Then we have just openly calling for Hitler too, and that's a tweet from Jesse Kelly. Let me tell you an uncomfortable truth. This country needs a dictator. As the great John Adams said, a free country only works for moral people. We are not worthy of freedom. A dictator is coming. And I said Reddit would love the dictator to happen to be a progressive leftist. I'm sure Reddit says, oh, we hate dictators, we hate authoritarianism, but I'm sure if AOC was the dictator, Reddit would love it, and they wouldn't shut up about how great things were. So, that's important to remember when people say, oh, we want a dictator. I would say a lot of people want a dictator. That's politics for you. The people want a dictator they agree with. And that's important to remember. I'm personally an anti-dictator. I don't want anyone I don't think anyone has legitimate authority over me. And I think that's important to remember. You got to stand up for yourself, think for yourself, and say, these people don't make the rules for me. I make the rules for myself. That's how I think you have to, that's why I think you should look at life, But if you want to submit to authority, I think you should be able to. But I think you should try and resist authority, even if it's authority you agree with. What does the research show on school choice? But from OCPAthink.org by Ruin My Circle Jerk, and yeah, apparently that is the research is in favor of school choice. At least the research they link. Of course, it is easy to manipulate research, as we always go over. But that's when it's manipulated to something the left disagrees with. They suddenly call it out. But if it just says what the left agrees with, they don't care. It's just they use it to push a narrative. That's science for you. It's pushing narratives and nothing more. It's that's how you kind of look at. I look at science. Louisiana Republican breaks ranks to kill anti-trans bill, says he doesn't care whatever people say. Fred Mills is completely unbothered by the rights outrage over his vote, from newrepublic.com by Kage blah blah blah. And I said, I'm personally, I'm against all this gender-affirming care for children, but I do think it's good when a politician questions their party, and that's why I really like John Tyler, because he questioned his party and got kicked out of them, so that's the thing. I like someone who questions their party and thinks for themselves. That's what I really like about people, when they think for themselves and do what they think's right, not what their party thinks is right. So that's something that I would say. IRS veteran goes public as whistleblower in Hunter Biden criminal probe, from CNN.com by Ninja Lover. And that is, I guess, we should protect whistleblowers, I would say. Of course, anyone can be labeled a whistleblower, but I think someone who's willing to stand up to the regime and the president's son definitely should be protected. So that's my thoughts there. I'm glad for this IRS veteran. I hate the IRS, but I'm glad this person was willing to stand up against the regime. Then we have Supreme Court rules in favor of 94-year-old woman who got nothing when county took her condo from APnews.com by another one by Ninja Lover. And I guess that's good. It's always nice that the government that the Supreme Court is just saying the government just can't come up and take your property like that. So that's good. I don't think the government can ever take your property for any legitimate reason. That's why I'm really against these eminent domain laws, and that's why I think you have to, if you think the government's trying to take your land unjustly, you should be able to resist them however you see necessary, even if it requires use of force. That's my thoughts on that issue. City loses immunity defense due to genius legal move from YouTube.com. That's the YouTube from, what's the guy's name? Steve Leto. And yeah. So, I do think that, it's always nice to see government lose and the people win, I would say. So that's something that I would agree with. Then we have France destroys 35,000 champagne soda bottles. And that's from Ruin My Circle Jerk. That's from BBC.com, and I guess, I don't think we should be destroying stuff like that, or on a scale like that, but I guess, I think that if they have the force to do it, they were able to do it, I guess. I personally would have not justified that if I was in charge of France. I think we could spend our resources better than just destroying 35,000 bottles. You had one job, next one by my Puggin Inc., and that is a link to a meme of George. It says George Washington after the U.S. became a two-party system, and it's the kid with just a smug-looking face. So, yeah, I definitely don't like the two-party system either. I want a no-party system. I want everyone to think to have what they believe is legitimate authority, and they can treat it like a legitimate authority, but I don't think they should force other people to view it as legitimate authority if they don't want to. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have sorry for ruining your circle jerk from Ruin My Circle Jerk, and that's a meme of the guy pushing the two buttons, and he has abolished school choice and then follow science as the other one. And, I would agree with that. I think, if you want to think of that the science is different, you should be able to, but, you should always question what the science says, and if the science supports school choice, I think you should say, well, that's, I guess, if you want to think that you should be able to, but I personally disagree, but I personally support school choice, so that's my thoughts there. Ron DeSantis signs bill protecting Elon Musk if his rockets explode and kill workers from NewRepublic.com. And that is, I heard that, you just had the Twitter space of Elon Musk too, so that's just, the government's being corrupt as per usual, and that's important to remember, how the government is always going to be corrupt, no matter how well-meaning people come in when, a power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and you've always seen that throughout history, and I think that's really important to remember. The first national strategy for fighting anti-Semitism, finally here, what's in it, from NPR.org by Harumph. No, I skipped one. Sorry. Fifth House Democrat calls on Feinstein to resign from TheHill.com by Ninja Lover, and that's good. It's always nice to see people want to hold their party accountable. That's good. Then how Ron DeSantis, Tucker Carlson, and Elon Musk will change the Section 2 for debate from Reason.com by Harumph. And I'm glad, I hope they change, let's see, expect the very foundation of the internet to come under attack from politicians and mainstream media. So hopefully, on the internet, it's been kind of shaky ever since the 2016 election, and how they're trying to increasingly control it, if you read the Twitter files, and I think we're definitely going to see more of that as time goes on, but hopefully we can resist for as long as possible and support free speech. And we have the first national strategy for fighting anti-Semitism is finally here. What's in it, from NPR.org by Harumph. And that is, I thought that was interesting. I like Spike Cohen. He's a Jew who was the last VP nominee for the Libertarian Party, and he has the correct take as per usual. He said, he said, I got to let us own whatever firearms we wish to defend ourselves. Stop taking nearly half our money. Leave us alone. I'm not for people who hate me. I'm for people in power trying to rob me and order me around. I agree with that. As an autistic person, I would say a similar thing. I think you should combat ableism, but people want to be ableist. They should be able to do so. But the government, they shouldn't be forcing people not to be ableist if they don't feel like it. Then we have panicked by old fentanyl analogs. Biden embraces the mandatory minimums he claims to oppose. Read from Reason.com by Harumph. And yeah, that's politics for you. A politician being hypocritical, color me surprised there. That's not surprising at all. Then we have, we're sure it is for your campaign staffers as well, from LP National, and that's the link to the tweet from Nina Turner, who said, "Oh, we need a $25 minimum wage," and she's like, "Oh, I'm paying my staffers $15 an hour," and of course that's the classic rules but not for me. They always think that we can get around it, but they always, that's the libs for you. They always say, "Oh, we need a minimum wage as high as possible," but then they'll still find a way to justify not paying it. It's always how it goes. They'll say, "Oh, it's technically volunteer work or something." Yeah, then we have to determine whether you live in a free country, observe how the country's government treats its citizens. And that was Matt Taibbi tweeting, "Oh, the IRS opened up a case against me on the night I was doing a big Twitter file reveal." And I said, and of course, when it comes to the U.S., a dissident, of course, being anyone who thinks differently at all, even in the slightest possible way. So that's important to remember. When eventually, when anyone who questions this narrative is a dissident, I would say, when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty. So that's, you gotta stand up against this country as authoritarian government and support free speech and thinking for yourself. Colorado repealed law limiting municipal interest, internet, making it easier for towns to build their own. From ColoradoSun.com by Harumph. That sounds good. DeSantis has claimed that there hasn't been a single book ban in Florida. Isn't true. From WFA.com by Harumph. And I have to look into that, but I do think they're mostly just removing them from the schools, but I'll have to look into that later. Let's see what it says. Where there are no statewide bans on books, but school districts make their own rules during... Well, the thing is that school districts aren't, I would say when a book is removed from a school, it isn't really necessarily banned in the whole state. So that's my thoughts there. I personally don't like DeSantis, but that's important to remember as well. Then I have the position of POTUS itself is what needs to be done away with. I tweeted that in response to a Chris Reagan tweet, and I would agree with that. I think if the POTUS is an inherently corrupt position, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's what increasingly the POTUS has become, in addition to being kind of a figurehead leader. So I think we just got to dissolve this current whole federal government nuclear option, as I like to say, and from there we can, if people want to make their own governments and view whatever 40 is legitimate, they should be able to do that, but they can't force other people to do it. If people want to view there being no government, they should be able to do it as long as they don't violate the NAP, I would say. Texas lawmakers recommend impeaching AG Ken Paxton after Republican investigation, from NBCDFW.com by Harumph, and I guess that's good. I don't really care too much for Ken Paxton, so yeah, and it's good to see his own party turn on him, I would say. Then we have The Market Just Collapsed from Beige Forever, and that's a YouTube video from Scotty Kilmer. And I remember, yeah. So, yeah, so I guess that's not too good. I don't know what he means by the market just collapsed. And, yeah, so, yeah, the market's not doing too well right now. I don't know if we're at collapse yet, but I think I'm getting there, I would say. And finally, we have family says 11-year-old who called 911 for help was shot by a responding officer, from WFA.com. And I agree that's no good. Sometimes that's the risk you take when you call the police, So, yeah, that's why I really don't call him often. I think last time I called the police I think I've only called them once in the past 20 years or so. And that's important to why you shouldn't be calling them. Unless it's, I would say, an emergency and you have no other options. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up there, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.